brine flies in the north arm of the Great Salt Lake. There we go. So we'll just start out with what are brine flies. Brine flies are in the genus of Phaedra. It's a genus for shore flies, and they live on the shores of the Great Salt Lake. They're a major part of the food web for the Great Salt Lake, especially for the migratory birds. They're one of the big reasons they come here. The brine fly larvae develop in the water in the lake, and then they pupate on rocks and microbialites, and then emerge as adults and live on the shores, no longer in the water. And they are not the bugs that bite you. Those are different bugs. Brine flies are very harmless. And they're typically found in the southern arm of Great Salt Lake below the train tracks. That's where the water parameters are good enough for their algae that they like to eat. This is a picture of some of the brine flies in sort of their natural habitat. This one's actually the north arm population that I found. And they're all just that brown stuff on the edge of the water. That's all just giant masses of flies. My research is sort of a population dynamics study. I had seen the flies before when I was helping with some other research at the tar seeps last summer. And I wanted to know if they were an actual population there or if they just were being blown over across the lake. One of the other questions I'm trying to answer, along with population dynamics, is also what this means for birds, if that could be a potential food source for birds and have them come to the northern arm. The way that I investigated this, I got a drop tent and I got a modified vacuum that has a little hose in it and a place where I can put a sampling tube. And I would take samples at populations in both the north arm and the south arm and compare them. This is pictures of me and my family collecting some flies this was our south arm location. And this is sort of how we did it. I just dropped the tent and suck them up. So in the south arm, I went to Bridger Bay on Antelope Island. It was sort of my control population. I would get 2 to 3 samples on a weekly basis from June to August. And these are some of the birds that I saw there. They were mostly gulls. And you can see in the video, some of them are just reaching out and snapping their beaks to catch the flies directly from the air. There were so many flies in the south arm. In the north arm, which is this pink part up here, there were 2 main areas that I looked at. I looked at the tar seeps at Roselle Point. That's where my sort of original findings were, or my original observations. And then I also looked at a freshwater seep about 100 meters from Spiral Jetty. And I did a very similar process. I would take 2 samples per site when possible, because there weren't as many flies at the tar seeps. I would find out. And then I would do that also on a weekly basis from June to August. And so this is one of like the bigger points of my research is we got some very cool bird activity at the freshwater seep in the North Arm. We found snowy plovers there, which for those of you who don't know, snowy plovers are a pretty vulnerable shorebird species. Um, they nest in the ground, and that um, makes it easy for like their nests to get trampled and stuff. So finding these guys at the North Arm was super cool. At first, I thought it was like just like a one-time thing, but they kept coming back whenever, basically whenever I would be there to get samples. Oftentimes there was a snowy plover there too. Um, and this is really important for one of those research questions I was asking about how the flies would, or how birds would, if they would have anything to do with fly populations in the North Arm, because that's kind of an unexpected place for the flies to be. And this shows that birds kind of know that these flies are there, and the regularity of these snowy plovers coming over, it kind of implies that the the population at this freshwater seep might be a more regular occurrence than I had originally thought. And so these are just some more pictures of the snowy plovers. They're just coming over all day from like, one of them was like 3 p.m. This one's at 11 a.m. And so, yeah, they're always around. It's really cool. I've even seen them at the tar seeps once or twice, which was also pretty unexpected because the tar seeps are kind of far from where this water seep is. Um, and this is just another clear picture to show it is a snowy plover. Um, just want to give thanks to Westminster College, the Great Salt Lake Institute, and the Great Salt Lake Audubon for supporting my research. And then also give a big thanks to my family and coworkers because because of the pandemic, it made it really difficult to be able to go out and get this research done, and they were all a big help. Any questions?
Thanks. We'll clap for you. That was awesome. Yeah, please ask questions.
Becky, I had a question. It sounded like one of your research questions was to determine why some of these brine flies would be found in the North Arm. Did you find any evidence as to why that might be the case of their movement towards the North Arm?
Yeah, I wasn't there's just so much stuff about this that I felt like I wouldn't have, like I wanted to put it in here so bad, but I felt like 10 minutes isn't a very long time. But yeah, there, like I noticed like underneath sort of like the salty layer of the soil, like when you dig it up in lots of places you'll see like green algae looking soil. Um, and I had gotten a sample of it from one of the like smaller water seeps that I had found flies at. Um, and I'm hoping that we can maybe analyze that and see if that can be, we can see what, if it's like an algae that they're known to eat living in that soil. Because it just happens to be that where the flies are, there's also green soil nearby.
I have a question, Becky. I'm curious about, because I know up there near the tar seeps, there's some there's some groundwater seeps. And so the pools in the margins there might not be as salty as the North Arm water itself. And given that the flies are there, first of all, I want to know if you know the salinity of those pools. And second of all, is there any evidence that they're doing their life cycle there?
Oh
Like
yeah.
in the water?
Yeah, I must have not told very many people about this, but okay, first of all, I don't know the salinity of that because a lot of the like at that larger seep, like the closer you get to the water, the more easily you can sink up to your knees in mud. So that was a bit hard to get anything from there. But at the smaller seep, that's like right by one of the tar seeps, I had like really like dug into the hole that the water's coming out of, and I successfully raised a couple brine flies out of that dirt. There were a couple larvae in there. So yeah, there is evidence that that's like a year-round or at least a seasonal site. It's not just like they got stuck there and there just happened to be food and water. There is a place for them to breed and have their larvae develop as well.
I think that would be the first evidence of that and up in that area. I think that's awesome.